Jessica Valderrama has been married for 21 years and has 3 children. She started her hermit crab journey because of her son in July 2020. While on vacation, she found Crab Central Station and the Land Hermit Crab Owners Society. Jessica's passion for hermit crabs developed quickly after that, and now she has 6 captive bred babies and has rescued over 30 wild-caught crabs. She is a moderator in Lycos and the Crabby Hermit. She enjoys teaching others on how to care for their hermit crabs. Please welcome Jessica Valderrama.
Hello everyone and welcome to CrabCon 2023. My name is Jessica and we're going to be talking a little bit about our hermit crab's strange behavior and why do they do what they do. The title of my talk today is Getting to Know You Better. So we're going to be just talking a little bit about restless behavior, molting behavior, naked crab, impending molt, croaking or chirping, grooming, carrying eggs, roosting and why they do it, aggression, pecking order, antenna wars, and how to identify them from each other, and illness. So here we have a few pre-molt symptoms. So we have an impending molt. Usually when there is an impending molt, 2 weeks prior to their actual molt, when they go down, you will see your crabs a little restless. They will be climbing on the glass, climbing on the lid, trying to escape, doing things that they don't usually do. On the wheel quite often, sometimes you will see them day and night on there. Then we have gorging, food, sometimes not even eating at all. It all depends on the crab, and you do have to keep in mind that not every crab is the same. Some will show these symptoms and some won't even show any at all. So it all depends on the crab. So here you can also see on the crab the discoloration. It's usually a very big sign of impending molt. Usually that you will see it on the limbs, on the tips of their legs, the lighter color. That just shows that his exoskeleton is getting ready to shed. You can even see in the close-up picture here with this crab eating, you can see his exoskeleton starting to detach from him. So that's also a sign as well. You will see that in between the joints. So here we have some more impending molt symptoms like restless behavior we spoke about. Sometimes we will find our crabs on the wheel for days at a time and they won't get off. We see questions all the time, people asking if it's normal for their crabs to be on the wheel so much and not eating or sleeping. During this time, usually these symptoms show up prior to their molt, about 2 weeks before. So they get this big energy doing these kind of things like climbing on the glass I mentioned before, or on the wall. Things that they don't usually do on a day-to-day basis, you actually see them do more of it during this time. Then you have trying to escape, practice digging. Sometimes we'll wake up and we'll look in our tank, and we see lots of holes in the substrate. That's just the crab trying to find the perfect spot for him to go down to molt. A lot of shell shopping usually does happen during this time. The crabs will change out shells quite often until they find the right size. And not all crabs will change before going down to mold. Some of them will change when they come back up. So it all, like I said, it all depends on the crab. They know what they need and what they want. And I mentioned before the color. In the previous video, you were able to see the lighter color on his exoskeleton. That is a very big sign of pre-molt symptoms. Then we have here on the right side, you see the eye stalks. They look a little strange, and it's completely normal. Some people would think that their crab is sick. And if you can see, his exoskeleton looks like it's detaching. So he's getting ready to molt. After this picture I took of this crab, he went down a few days later. So you can actually see his pupils look as if he's looking in an outward position. So like I mentioned, they do look a little strange. A crab during this time will find himself feeling uncomfortable. You would see, like in this picture on the left side bottom, you can see he's actually sitting back on his shell. He was feeling very uncomfortable. And some crabs during this time, like I mentioned before, some eat a lot and some don't eat at all. So they would be a little sluggish. And so a little bit after that, like I said, this was the same crab that was up on the top right. He did go down to molt a few days later. And it was a good molt. He came back up 6 months later. Here you can also find a lot of hanging out of the shell. As you can see here, he was, like I mentioned, he was uncomfortable. Then we have grooming. Grooming is very fascinating to watch them groom. The fifth pteropods are known as a gill cleaner, as gill cleaners, and rest on the abdomen. The pteropods are used for most of the central and posterior grooming. So they would use that little claw, that hands, to clean on the inside of their shell and on the outside of the shell. It's also called the third pair of walking legs. A lot of us do call it the alien leg because it is a little strange, but very fascinating. They can actually use it sometimes as they're walking on the substrate. This crab here, he had just came up from a molt, same crab from before. He had some extra exoskeleton left over, and he was feeling uncomfortable, and he was trying to pick at it for quite a bit. And I saw that he was acting a little sluggish. He just kept going at that exo that was remaining. So I did end up isolating him. A few days later, he was fine, and he returned to the main tank. And then you can see on the video on the right side, he's actually grooming his face. It's pretty amazing to watch. Here you have what we call antenna fencing or antenna wars. This is not aggressive at all. During this time, this is just a form of them communicating with each other. Antennae are touching and moving back and forth pretty fast. They are pretty close to each other. They brush up against each other. And like I mentioned, it's not aggressive. Sometimes you will see this happen when you introduce a new crab into the colony, or it can be when they just come up from a molt. They haven't been in the colony for a while, so they're just establishing. It's also a part of pecking order, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Here we have some aggression. these are some great videos explaining what it actually is. Sometimes a few people can misinterpret this for mating behavior because it looks a little the same, but it's not. This is actually a form of aggression. The crab is rocking the other crab. Sometimes when they don't have enough resources or shells in your tank, this can happen. So he will continue to rock the crab until he exits his shell. So other forms of aggression, as you can see in the right side, is an open claw. When a crab is being backed up into a wall or being bullied by another crab, he will feel he'll be in distress, so he will try to attack as well. As you can see, the open claw. Other forms of aggression would be pulling the other crab out of the shell, which is very dangerous. Open claw, like I mentioned, the aggressor will tap on the other crab's shell with his pincer. You will sometimes during these occasions you will hear chirping or croaking. That is a sound of distress. So we definitely, if we hear something like that, we want to find out what is going on and address the situation. Rocking the shell is what we call shell jacking. So we definitely want to address the situation, make sure that we have plenty of shells in our crab habitats. I like to say 5 to 6 shells per crab. We want to make sure that the crabs have the correct shells and sizes, which is a very big important point. So we want to make sure that if you're not sure about the size, we want to make sure that you can size them correctly. If you're not sure, you can always visit us on our Facebook Lycos group, and we will be help. We'll be happy to help. So this is that. Here we have chirping or croaking. A crab will make this sound when in distress. So we want to, if we hear this sound ever occur in our tanks, we want to go and find out what's going on and fix the situation so it doesn't turn into something we don't like. This sound is also made by the rubbing of the appendages. Which is they're so fascinating. They make this sound as a warning. So, like I mentioned before, something is wrong. We want to go and find out what it is. We have to remember that when we're introducing a new crab into our enclosures, we want to be present at all times, just in case there is any form of aggression. There will be pecking order. There might be pecking order, not in all cases. Some crabs adjust very well, and some are territorial because that's what they are by nature. Hermit crabs are territorial, so they want to claim their space or a certain item or food. So we want to make sure that we have lots of those resources for them in the tank so that they don't feel the need to fight for those resources. Here we have a naked crab. The purpose of a shell is to protect their abdomen. Their abdomens are very fragile. They're very soft. So any type of injury to their abdomen can cause the crab death. So if you were ever to find yourself in a situation with a shellless crab, you definitely want to follow the naked crab protocol so that we can get that crab back into its shell. The purpose of a shell is not just for protection, but it also keeps the abdomen from drying out. We know that hermit crabs carry brackish water for molting, but it's not just for molting, it keeps their abdomen moist so it doesn't dry out. If your crab's abdomen does dry out, they most likely will not make it. Another thing that can cause your crab to go shellless would be stress. Stress before getting to a pet store. If you are Um, Seeing that your crab, you're purchasing your crab from a pet store, or you've gotten your crab from a beach shop, then most likely they have, before that process to get to that spot, they have gone through quite a bit of stress. If they are coming in painted shells, for example, we know that they have been forced out of those shells and into those painted ones. Another thing that can cause a crab to go shellless is a lack of proper care. That can that many things can fall under that category, meaning proper diet, um, a proper enclosure. Um, we know that a lot of crab food that is sold at the pet stores are not good for them, can make your crabs sick. I don't like to use the word toxic quite often, but to be frank, those foods 99% of the time have a lots of toxins that can make your crabs sick. Um, and they will most likely not make it. Physical damage as well. We know that in the beach shops, for example, we've seen them. There's so many crabs rammed into one cage, um, and they can find themselves hungry and dehydrated, and have no other choice but to, um, you know, cannibalism, which is sad. So, you know, they can come injured, they can come with lots of injury. Um, we know that when before they get to us, they're coming from the beach shops or pet stores, so they are dehydrated and hungry. So, making sure that they have the proper nutrition and they go through the PPDS process can help them acclimate to their new enclosure, so it wouldn't stress them out as much. So we want to make sure that they're able to adjust to their new environment at their own pace. So PPTS is perfect for that, to minimize this so much stress and help them adjust to their new enclosure. Um, Other things that can cause a crab to go shellless would be a shell fight. If you don't have enough shells in your tank, especially when you first get your crabs, a lot of information hasn't been provided to you. So you are most likely don't know how much shells you need or what type of shells. But this can cause your crab to go shellless, which would be another crab shell jacking it. Also, if your crab has been changing from one shell to another, another crab can come and take it away from them. And sometimes the crab can change into the shell and not feel comfortable in it. And usually, if they don't, they go back into their old shell. And if another crab grabs it, then he's left without a shell. That has been certain situations. Um, Another thing that can cause a crab to go shellless would be irritation. Hermit crabs carry brackish water in their shells, but sometimes things can get lodged inside their shell and cause them irritation. So we want to make sure that when we um, find that our crab in that situation, that they can we can rinse them out very well before going forward. So here we have guarding. Guarding is another form of mating behavior. So here, the male will guard the female. Usually, this will happen after she comes up from a molt. He will find his female and he will follow her around until he can mate with her. At first, it can look a little aggressive, but this is not aggressive. I would suggest just staying around, stay close, and take your cameras out if you like, and you can record just to make sure that nothing turns into aggression. If she does not give in, he will follow her around the tank, and it's completely normal. He wants to mate with her, and he will follow her until she submits. Um, with the mating, like I mentioned, he will guard her until they can mate. Here on this video, on the left, you can see she has submitted, and he will flip her over shell side up, and he is just gently holding her shell down until he can mate with her. It's all gentle. And then you can see in the center, the female is carrying her eggs. Typically, this will she will carry them for about 30 days until she can spawn. Here on the right side, you will see these are baby Zoes. She has spawned. Very fascinating. So here we have roosting. Roosting for safety. This crab here is carrying eggs, and she wants to get to the highest point of the tank to protect her eggs to keep them safe from the other crabs. Other reasons why a crab will roost is to get high and dry. We know that our base tank is very moist and very warm, very warm, not dry at all. So they want to go to the top of the tank and they want to get dry. The higher it is, the heat rises. It's also warm, especially on winter nights. It will be high and dry, and it'll be much warmer on the topper, if you have a topper. Usually, sometimes when I would see this kind of behavior with my captive bred babies, when in the summertime, usually when we get those bad thunderstorms, they will get to the highest point of the tank. And it's funny because they can sense the vibrations on the substrate. So they will feel the sounds and the vibrations through the substrate, and they will climb to the top highest point of the tank. So now we have here a sick crab. What can cause a crab to be sick would be a bad diet, for one. If you are feeding your crabs the store bought foods, they will make them sick over time for sure. A lot of those chemicals that are used in those foods will make them sick, which is something we don't recommend. Then also can be damaged gills. Hermit crabs have modified gills, so they do need a proper enclosure, completely sealed tank with 75 to 85 heat and humidity. In order for them to be able to breathe, they do need those safe numbers. Over time, if they don't have those safe numbers, they will have damage to their gills and will be sick. There can also be physical stress like we mentioned before. When you first purchased your crabs, if you purchase them, they can come sick, hurt. We can just imagine the things that they've been through. So it can be quite a bit of physical stress, and sometimes it's just too much for them to deal with and they can't make it. Then there's poor conditions. I mentioned before, they need a proper enclosure. They need proper substrate in order to maintain the heat and the humidity at safe levels in their tank, and they need at least 6 inches of substrate. We recommend 5 part children's play sand and 1 part cocoa fiber, thoroughly mixed and even throughout the tank, or 3 times the size of your largest crab. It's very important that we have salt, marine salt pools and freshwater pools, and they do need to be primed just to remove the chemicals from the water, so make it safe for them to drink. So that all those things come into play and how your crab can get sick. This crab here went through pretty much a lot of stress. Unfortunately, this was a rescue. He came from a person that had quite a bit of crabs, and she had no choice but to evacuate her home. So she did have to put them all in one small enclosure. And it was way too much for this crab to handle. He did pass after a week. Here we have pecking order. Pecking order is just a form of them communicating with each other and establishing who is in charge of whatever it is. And in this case, they were being they were he was claiming his shells. Hermit crabs are territorial by nature, so especially if you're introducing a new crab into the colony, this is more likely to happen during this time. I also mentioned after molt, when they're freshly molted, this can happen as well. Usually they would spread their legs out, spreading their arms like we would like this. So that is one form. Antenna wars, or they're flicking each other or even pushing. All of that is non aggressive. It's always good to be present when this is happening, just so you can keep an eye and make sure that it doesn't turn into aggression. If you would like to know a little bit more about what we spoke about today, you can always go on to crabstreetjournal.com. We have some amazing resources and lots of information on there that would help you get you started or explaining things that we have spoken about. If you also need help with anything, you can always join us on our Lycos Facebook group. We would be happy to help you with anything you need there. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for watching this talk. It has been a pleasure. And I also want to say thank you to Mary Akers for giving me this opportunity to bring this talk to you guys. I hope to see you guys all next year in CrabCon.